こんにちは冒険家元気ね Hello adventurers and welcome back to Where the Dragons Roam. Now as you see, we're in my kitchen today, and that's because in this video we're going to go over how I prepare vegan-friendly rice-wrapped fresh spring rolls. Now, bottom line up front first, these guys look super impressive if you do them right, but they're not all that difficult to make. With that being said, however, there are some aspects in preparing these that may seem a little daunting at first and might be kind of frustrating. And hopefully, I'm able to share with you in this video some tips and tricks to help you kind of circumnavigate the hurdles you may experience and alleviate some of the stress that making these might cause you. And also, I'll go over some baseline ingredient ideas that I almost always use when I make these. But typically when I do prepare them, I'm kind of an experimental person. I always like to try new things. So usually when I do make these, I don't make them the same way twice, with the exception of the baseline ingredients. So when I think of these things, I try to think of them almost as an egg roll. Just instead of the traditional like fried crust, we use a translucent rice wrapper. So I'll go ahead and I'll show you the ingredients that we have here today, and then we'll move on into the actual preparation of everything. So some of the key ingredients are obviously going to be the rice wrappers themselves. Now, at most grocers or Asian markets, you will find these in two different sizes, and I have examples of both here today. We have the smaller ones, these guys right here. Here's a big stack of them. Let me just grab one so you can see. That's what they look like. They're super thin, almost translucent. I mean, they are clear with the exception of like the crisscross pattern you see on there. They're very, very brittle. So these are the smaller ones. I would say they're maybe 6 or 7 inches, give or take. And then we also have the larger ones. Here's the wrapper for those. The wrapper for the wrappers. So here's what the larger ones look like. Okay, they're almost the size of my head. The exact same thing as the others. It has a different pattern on it, but it's just a larger, it's the same consistency. It's just a bigger version of the smaller ones. So those are the actual wrappers themselves. As far as what's going to go on the inside of these guys that I recommend you use is some kind of cabbage. And the easiest, most convenient way to get cabbage that's pre-shredded is actually going to be coleslaw. Sometimes I use a broccoli slaw, but I wasn't able to find some at my closest grocer today. So what I have here is I just have angel hair coleslaw. And what that is, it's just plain shredded cabbage, which is perfect. So those are two things I would suggest you, obviously you always use the rice wrappers, duh. But I suggest you always use some kind of cabbage as well. So we've got that, and then we're also, if that shredded cabbage isn't enough, I have a head of cabbage here as well. Other things that we're going to be using today that I recommend you always use is carrots and or celery. I have both of those here today. And then we also I have just a little container of dark green, dark leaf lettuce. This is baby romaine. We're going to be using onion, which is another thing that I recommend. If you don't like onion, you don't have to, but I do. So I already have half a sweet onion already. And if that's not enough, I also have this red one here. We will also use, okay, from this point on, these are just going to be suggestions, not really something that you have to use. But we're also going to use these avocados. And from my garden, I've picked just 3 pretty big looking mild banana peppers. That's really about all we need. So we're going to use banana peppers. And something I've never used before, we're going to try using these tomatillos. See how that turns out. And something else I've never used before is I grabbed some sun-dried tomato as well. So that's going to make things a little bit different. Oh yeah, it's something that I almost always use, but I don't always use, but I generally try to when I can find some available, is I like to add in sprouts. These are alfalfa sprouts. I'll show you. It just helps provide a little extra texture, and it has good nutritional value. Those are most of the ingredients that we're going to use. I'm not sure if we're going to use it or not, but I went ahead and I prepared something else that's going to be a little bit different for today. And what we have here is I have a little bit of black bean tortilla chips and dried garlic and some dried hot peppers out of my garden. Here's the peppers that I used. In here we have ghost pepper, habanero, and should be a little bit of jalapeno in there. These are just peppers I got out of my garden a long time ago, and I dehydrated them. So I've got those crunched up in here along with the garlic, the dried garlic. I got this just out of the salad section, like the salad topping section of my grocer. And then for the black bean tortillas, we're using bonitos. And what that's going to do is that's going to help with the texture as well as the taste. But it's going to really help with the texture because I like these to be good and crunchy. Okay, so those are going to be the ingredients that we're going to use for the filling. But also with the cabbage and with some of the other veggies, it's almost like we're making our own coleslaw. So we don't want these things to be super dry, so I like to make a sauce. And the kind of sauce we're going to be making today, I'm going to be using this soy-free veganese. It's just a vegan mayo. And then I'm also going to be trying this basil paste and a lemongrass paste. So all that stuff is fairly accessible at most grocers, but something that you will not find at grocery stores that I'm going to use today is some of you may or may not know, but I actually have a small hot sauce company, or hot sauce business, I guess. And if you know me personally, then you may have this sauce, but if you don't know me, then I'll guarantee you don't have it. So my sauce company is called Tame the Dragon, and we specialize in organic hot sauces that I pretty much cultivate most of the ingredients from my own garden out back. But what I have here in a repurposed Buddha beer bottle, because it looks cool, is my company's hot sauce. This is Tame the Dragon's Ghost in the Sauce. Now the Ghost in the Sauce hot sauce, it's smoked with honey whiskey, and the peppers that I use are ghost peppers. And I also throw in a little extra basil in there. So this is it's very, very potent stuff. It's really, really hot, but it's also very, very flavorful. But I like super hot things. That's why I've used the dried hot peppers in addition to adding the hot sauce. So that's going to be it for the ingredients that we're going to be using today. In the description down below, I'll put some general ideas for I'll list out these ingredients, and then I'll also list out some suggestions for other ingredients that I've used in the past that have worked out really well. So for this next portion of the video, we're going to swing things around. Let me reposition the camera and so you can actually see everything that I'm doing. And we'll be back with you in just a second, okay? Ikuyo! Hey, welcome back. So I went ahead and repositioned the camera so you can get a closer look at what I'm going to be doing. This next portion is I'm going to start preparing some of the veggies and stuff. I'm just going to chop them up a little bit. Nothing too crazy, and I'm probably not going to be using all that I have here. So I went ahead and got like some extra containers to put the parts in that I'm going to actually use. So I'm just going to use a knife and just chop them up, some of the stuff real quick. I may or may not just kind of like do a fast play of this. It's nothing too crazy to actually watch. I'm going to go ahead and reset my station, wash my hands, and I'll be back with you in just a second. Ikio. Okay, so I went ahead and kind of resituated our workstation and got rid of the stuff that I know I don't need anymore. And while I was doing that, I forgot about the sun-dried tomato. So that's what we look like now. That's super dry, right? So we need to add the sauce. But before we add the sauce, we have to make the sauce. Now I could sit here and I could stir it up this way with just something manual like that, but I chose this container for a reason. And that's because it has a lid. So welcome back. Okay, so where we are now is I went ahead and I repositioned everything, got my area all nice and cleaned up, and I have all the ingredients that I will need to make these within quick, easy arm's reach. Because as soon as I start actually making these things and rolling them, after these guys get wet, it doesn't take very long for them to be very, very hard to manage. So I want to make sure that after I get these wet and on the board, that I can get all the toppings on there within a fairly quick amount of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through everything before I actually show you guys. That way I don't miss anything too severe. So I have this pan of water. It's just water. Sometimes when I do make it, instead of using water, I will use a lemon juice, or I'll use a lime juice, or a vinegar. And I've used straight up just hot sauce before. And sometimes I've also added dry seasoning as well. And what this does is this is how you're going to moisten your rice wrappers. You're going to dip it in here. And if you have something besides just water, that's going to change. It's going to change the flavor profile a little bit of the wrapper itself, as well as change the aesthetic. So if you have like a darker liquid in here, then it's going to dye this a darker color as well. But since I want everything to be kind of easy for you to see for the purposes of the video, we're going to use just plain old water, keep it nice, simple, and traditional. Now the actual pan itself, it is a little smaller than I would like for it to be to use the larger wrappers. Ideally, you want something that's going to be larger than the wrapper itself. So this would be great for using the little wrappers. We may do that as well. But we're gonna do the larger ones. That way it shows up easier on camera for everyone to see. So what I will do is I'm gonna get this all nice and wet. See, right now it's dry and kind of brittle. If I were to like really fold it, it would break. But after you get it wet, it's gonna become really pliable. Let me adjust the camera here real quick. Then after this is wet, what I'm going to do is I have this cutting board, right? On top of the cutting board, I've laid down some parchment paper, and then I'm going to take this chopstick. Here's the big trick that I was telling you about. I take this chopstick. The cutting board has ridges, but I take the chopstick, I put it on the edge of the cutting board, and after this is wet, I'm going to lay the wrapper to where the bottom edge or the lip of the wrapper is going to go over the chopstick. That way, after I get all my fillings on here and it's time for me to roll it, instead of like struggling to get this off of the cutting board or off the parchment paper, I can actually just lift up on the chopstick. And that's going to make it so much more accessible for me to roll it. Now, another trick that I do when I make these is it really helps with structural integrity. I actually use 2 wrappers. Now, you can get away with only using one, and it'll work out just fine, provided that you're kind of careful with it. But I've found that when you use 2 wrappers, it gives you the option of having your ingredients placed in layers, as well as providing a little extra strength, because you'll find that after these get wet, they're also very easily perforated, meaning that anything that's kind of harder, like these carrots, for instance, they can easily poke through and rip holes in your wrapper, which you don't want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start the process. I'll probably still talk through it, but I'm going to be focused mostly on getting the visual down so you can see what I'm doing. And yeah, so we're just going to get into it. So what I'm doing now is I'm just getting this rice wrapper wet. I don't want it to be super duper soggy and super flimsy because I still want it to have some structural integrity to it. Because now that it is wet, it's going to remain wet. The wrapper is going to soak up all that moisture. So while we're working on getting everything filled up, it's gonna get all soggy. So I gotta work fast. First thing I'm doing, since I'm putting mine in layers, is I'm gonna take some sprouts and I'm gonna lay it in a fairly thin layer all along the inside of the area of the wrapper. I'm gonna try to leave a perimeter of exposed wrapper of about 1 inch to 1.5 inches around the outside corners. All right, that's good. So I'm going to go ahead and get my next wrapper wet. Got to move pretty quick with it, okay? And what I'm going to do with this guy is I'm going to place it. You can either place it directly on top of the other wrapper, or you can do what I like to do, is I like to place it offset a little bit to the left or to the right of the first layer. And what that's going to do is that's going to give me a little bit of extra material for when I go to roll it. I'll have a little bit of extra stuff to pinch for the ends. And what I'm doing right now is I'm not pushing down too hard, but I'm trying to make sure that each wrapper 1 and wrapper 2, have portions that make contact with each other. And now I'm going to take my green leafy stuff, also purple stuff because it's romaine, but I'm going to create a thin layer, kind of like what I did with the sprouts. I'm going to create a thin layer around the center area of this wrapper, leaving an exposed area of like maybe 1 inch, 1.5 inches around the sides. Okay, so that's good. Now I'm going to start filling it in with all my good stuff. When I'm placing all my innards, I want to try to get most of it on to just the lettuce. And I want to keep it fairly even. Almost square it off if you can. about like that. You don't want to go too crazy and too heavy with it. The more stuff you have on the inside of it, the harder it's going to be to wrap. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the celery and I'm going to just make a little line. I'll use these 2 pieces, that's fine. I'll add in the carrots as well, just put those next to the celery. I'll use 3. Since I have the tomatillos, I'll throw those in there too. This is already getting really, really thick, and this is probably going to be more stuff in there than I would like for the purposes of making it easy to roll. But we've got all the stuff, we're going to try it. Now I'm just throwing in the avocado as well, just put in 2 slices. We're going to go crazy and add the sun-dried tomato. I've never tried that in here before. Okay, so now that's good. It's not a giant mound, but it's still pretty substantial. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to cover that area of all that stuff with just another layer of leafy lettuce or cabbage like bok choy or something like that you have. Okay, so that's good to go. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to lift up on my chopstick like I pointed out, and that's going to help me get the wrappers off of the paper or off the cutting board. And then I'm going to start rolling it. I dropped my chopstick, that's okay. See, it's super sticky. And that's because normally I want to go a little bit faster when I'm doing this, but because I'm trying to talk through it while I'm doing it, it makes it kind of hard to go at the right speed. But yeah, so I've got it folded over about halfway. I'm going to grab the ends and go ahead and get it to where I pull each corner up and over the inside portions, like all the fillings. And I want to try to get wrapper to wrapper contact. That's what's going to hold it all together. Okay, so I've got contact, and I'm just going to start rolling it. And as I roll it, I'm going to pinch the inside portions a little bit, and that's going to help squeeze everything together to where it's like just nice and tight. And it would have came out a lot cleaner if I went faster. The faster you go when you're preparing these, the better. Because when they start to dry, they become super duper sticky and really hard to manage, and they're very, very easy to tear. Like, see what we have right here? That's actually a big rip in it. But what we can try to do is sometimes, if it's still a little wet, we can even add a little bit of water, which is what I'm doing right now. We can add a little bit of water, and sometimes, depending on where the tear is, you can fold it back together and just apply pressure with your hand and squeeze, and that'll put the wrapper back together. Unfortunately, with this particular roll, because it's along the side right there, I was unable to do that. But this is just for the purposes of this video. It's not like this has to really go anywhere. I'm just going to eat it now, basically. So this is actually fine for me. Now, if I was making this for someone else, or if I was making these to take to a function or something like that, then obviously I would want to do a better job than this. But overall, this is generally what they will look like. See, it looks really cool, and they taste better than they look. In fact, I'll go ahead and bite into this guy and let you see what they look like after you've ripped into it a little bit. This thing is huge, by the way. Woo! Very good. What's up, down with some super dry? Woo! It's very, very hot. I added a lot of really spicy stuff in there, but that's good. So here's what it looks like on the inside there. You see you have the lettuce all around the outside, almost like it's like a lettuce wrap that's wrapped in sprouts, and then it's wrapped in the rice wrapper. So everything is in layers. Having the lettuce surround all the inside stuff is gonna help keep like the carrots and the celery from poking through the wrapper. But this is awesome. So that's on point. Okay. So next up is we're going to make a different kind, because if you notice, there are some ingredients that I did not use in that one. So I'm going to make another kind. I'll use the smaller wrappers. I'll use these little guys. And we're going to use the dry, like crunchy stuff. And I also decided that I'm going to add in some shredded Daya pepper jack or vegan cheese as well. Just going to go for a completely different profile and different aesthetic. So since we're going to use the smaller ones, these are actually a little bit harder to manage sometimes. I dropped my chopstick, so bear with me. Let me grab something else. That'll work. So we're going to just repeat the exact same process, but these guys are going to be smaller, so they might be a little bit harder to do. And you're going to use significantly less ingredients and stuff. I'm just moving the camera down again so you can see. I'm not going to talk a whole lot during this portion. I just want to make sure you guys can see everything that I'm doing. So I'm just going to do it one more time. And hopefully it turns out a little bit better than the last one did. I mean, the other one turned out just fine. It tastes fine. It just had that little bit of a tear in there. And that's because I was talking and I really wasn't going as fast as I should. So I'm going to go a little bit faster. I'm going to layer this one a little bit different, just for the sake of trying something else out. I'll just throw a little bit of lettuce on there instead of the sprouts. Moisten up my next layer. I did not grip my cheese ready already, which is going to be no bueno, but we'll make it work. Okay. So both layers are pretty wet, good to go. This one, because it's smaller, I'm gonna make it offset a little more substantially than I did the other one. All right. Same thing applies. Take some green leafy stuff on the inside. Significantly less than I used last time, mind you. Let's grab a little handful of this cheese. Not a lot, don't need a ton. Let's go with avocado. This time I'm not going to use the cabbage stuff because I'm going for something completely different. And I honestly don't know how it's going to turn out, but we'll find out in just a minute. We'll take a little bit of sun-dried tomato. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to add in my crunchy stuffs. I'm going to use a lot of that. Super crunchy. Okay, that's good. A little bit of sprouts just for the heck of it, because we got them. May as well use them. Okay. And I'm gonna do this one completely different. I'm trying to keep it as non-veggie as I can. So we're gonna just roll like that. And I'm gonna go ahead and literally roll it. And get about halfway through. Take one end, carefully pinch it over to where wrapper makes contact with wrapper. Do that on the other side. Wrapper makes contact with wrapper. Give it a little pinch. And slowly roll it up. This one should turn out a little bit better than that other one did, as far as not tearing. Ta-da! And so you have like the little loose ends. What I was saying is if you just pull it to where wrapper makes contact with wrapper, apply a little pressure, and the heat from your hand is going to help seal it together, okay? So that's that one. It looks completely different, doesn't it? Because it has completely different ingredients. We're going to try this guy. I bet this guy is going to be a lot hotter. So bear with me. Oh yeah. Yep. Sound focus? Not really. This guy tastes completely, it's completely different. This tastes like something, if you were a sports fan, but you were still health conscious, this is the kind of thing that I could see like having like, if you have like the spread of like your game food or game spread or whatever, maybe having something like this out there, because it is freaking delicious. Oh yeah. Those are some vegan rice wrapped fresh spring rolls. Let me wash that down a little bit. Pardon me. So that's going to be it for the for this video. If you guys have ever made anything like this before, and maybe you've made them a different way, if you try different kinds of ingredients possibly, let me know down below if you have any suggestions of what I may want to consider trying to fill these with. I'm always interested to try new things, as you know, as I usually say. If you're not learning, you're not living. And I like being alive, so I like to learn. So hopefully you guys got something out of this, and I'm gonna go and make some more of them. All right. Until next time, man. Matane. Yeah. You're populated over here. We're just going. Matane, guys. Bye, bye.